A centuries-long war between humans and vampires ravages the surface of the planet, reducing civilization to ruins and forcing humanity into a desperate fight for survival. In the chaos, a powerful theocracy known only as the Church rises to dominance, offering structure and salvation in exchange for unquestioned obedience. Though vampires are vulnerable to sunlight, their superior strength, speed, and brutal cunning make them nearly unstoppable in open combat. Humanity is driven to the brink until the survivors retreat behind towering, walled cities and create a new weapon. The priests, an elite order of specially trained warriors imbued with extraordinary combat abilities and unwavering faith. With the priests leading the charge, the tide of war finally turns. Most of the vampire horde is eradicated, and the few that remain are confined to heavily guarded reservations far from the sanctuaries of human civilization. Declaring victory, the clergy claims that the war is over and disbands the surviving priests, forcing them to abandon their calling and assimilate into a tightly controlled society where the Church rules with an iron grip. But beyond the walls, not all humans submit to this authority. Scattered across the desolate frontier, some choose a life of independence, risking the dangers of the wastelands to live free from the Church's surveillance and control. In the shadows of a fragile peace, the embers of rebellion and ancient horrors still smolder. One particular priest, now living in obscurity within the oppressive confines of the Church-controlled city, is unexpectedly approached by Hicks, the sheriff of a small, independent frontier town called Augustine. Hicks brings grim news. Priest's estranged brother Owen and his wife Shannon were killed during a violent vampire attack on their remote homestead. Even more devastating, their daughter and priest's niece Lucy was abducted during the assault. Hicks, who harbors deep feelings for Lucy and is determined to rescue her, pleads for Priest's help. Though he has long since been forced into civilian life, Priest's sense of duty and lingering guilt compel him to act. He petitions the clergy to reinstate his authority so he can pursue the vampires and recover Lucy. However, Monsignor Aurelius, the cold and calculating head of the Church, refuses his request. He dismisses the threat as superstition or fabrication, insisting the vampire menace was eradicated years ago and labeling Priest's concerns as dangerous dissent. Undeterred by the denial, Priest chooses to defy the Church's order and leaves the city, determined to save his niece. Viewing this as both insubordination and a threat to the Church's fragile narrative of peace, Aurelius secretly dispatches a deadly retrieval squad, 3 elite priests and a priestess, tasked with hunting down Priest and bringing him back, dead or alive. Priest and Hicks travel deep into the desolate wastelands and arrive at Nightshade Reservation, one of the last remaining vampire enclaves under Church control. There, they encounter familiars, humans infected with a parasitic pathogen that strips them of free will and renders them loyal, obedient servants to the vampires. These pitiful creatures serve their monstrous masters in a grim mockery of coexistence. As tensions quickly erupt into violence, Priest and Hicks engage in a brutal battle, overcoming the familiars and hostile vampires guarding the perimeter. In the aftermath, they uncover disturbing intelligence. Most of the remaining vampires have taken refuge in the hive of Sola Mira, a massive underground lair long believed to be abandoned since the end of the war. Recognizing the name, Priest is visibly shaken. Sola Mira was the site of one of his darkest failures, where he lost a fellow priest under his command, a memory that continues to haunt him with guilt and regret. As they prepare to enter the hive, they are joined by Priestess, one of the elite warriors sent by the Church to retrieve Priest. However, her loyalty lies not with the clergy, but with her former comrade. Having fought beside Priest during the bloodiest days of the war, she chooses to side with him over the Church, sensing a greater threat is rising in the shadows. Together, Priest, Priestess, and Hicks delve into the hive and engage a monstrous hive guardian, a towering, feral vampire bred for raw strength and savagery. After a fierce battle, they manage to destroy the beast. Deeper inside, they make a horrifying discovery. The vampires have not only regrouped, they've been breeding a new army in secret. Even worse, they've excavated a massive tunnel leading directly to a nearby human settlement called Jericho. As night falls over Jericho, the other 3 priests sent by Monsignor Aurelius arrive, unaware of the looming danger. A sudden rumble announces the approach of an ominous, armored train, an unnatural war machine that crashes through the silence and releases a swarm of vampires upon the unsuspecting town. At the head of the assault stands a mysterious and menacing figure, a powerful human dressed in black, known only as Black Hat. He offers the priests a choice: join him in his crusade against the Church or die. When they refuse, Black Hat mercilessly slaughters them, revealing both his strength and the depth of his betrayal. The next morning, priest, priestess, and Hicks arrive in Jericho only to find the town eerily silent and abandoned. Buildings stand undisturbed, meals lie uneaten, and belongings are scattered as if the townspeople vanished in an instant. The grim truth reveals itself in the town square, where the bodies of the 3 priests sent by Monsignor Aurelas hang gruesomely crucified, left as a brutal message. Their deaths confirm the scale of the threat and the cunning of the enemy they now face. While inspecting the area near the train depot, Priest finds a broken pocket watch lying in the dirt, its cracked face and stopped hands suggesting it was dropped only hours earlier. The discovery sparks a chilling realization. The vampires have been using armored trains to move swiftly during daylight hours, sheltered from the sun inside reinforced compartments. By traveling during the day and attacking at night, they've bypassed traditional defenses and taken free towns by surprise, leaving no survivors or warning. Hicks, still trying to grasp the scale of the danger, argues that the city should be safe. Their towering walls and the natural protection of daylight ought to repel any vampire attack. But Priest coldly explains the flaw in that logic. The walled cities may once have been sanctuaries, but years of industrialization and ceaseless smokestack pollution have blotted out the sky. Realizing the urgency of the situation, the trio sets out to intercept the train before it reaches its final destination, before the last stronghold of humanity falls into darkness. As the urgency of their mission intensifies, tension begins to mount within the group. During a heated confrontation, Hicks confronts Priest, driven by fear and desperation. He warns that if Lucy has been infected by the vampires, he won't allow Priest to kill her to prevent her from turning. Hicks, who is deeply in love with her, believes Priest's cold, warrior-like resolve would push him to treat her as just another casualty, another necessary sacrifice in the war. Priest, visibly affected but silent, doesn't respond with anger. Instead, it's Priestess who steps in, revealing a painful and long-buried truth. Lucy isn't just Priest's niece, she is his daughter. The revelation leaves Hicks reeling. His anger begins to give way to confusion and sorrow. As he realizes the bond Priest feels for Lucy runs far deeper than duty or guilt. As the train barrels toward the city and time runs out, the group splits to execute a final, desperate plan. Priestess races ahead on her motorcycle, carrying a satchel of explosives with the intent to sabotage the railroad tracks and stop the train before it reaches the city gates. Meanwhile, Priest and Hicks stealthily board the moving train, navigating its dark, metallic corridors in search of Lucy. Inside, they face overwhelming resistance, packs of snarling vampires and vicious familiars guarding every passage. In a brutal, close-quarters battle, the two fight their way through the cars, cutting down enemy after enemy with relentless determination. They eventually find Lucy, alive but terrified, held deep within the armored train. However, just as they reach her, they are ambushed and overpowered by the train's leader, Black Hat. The confrontation takes a shocking turn when Black Hat reveals his true identity. He is the very priest whom Priest failed to save years ago during the doomed assault on Solamira. Left for dead and taken prisoner by the vampires, he was brought before the Vampire Queen, who, seeing potential in him, offered him her blood. He accepted, transforming into something unprecedented, the first true vampire-human hybrid, a creature with all of vampire's power but none of its weaknesses, including immunity to sunlight. Now, filled with resentment and twisted purpose, Black Hat seeks to bring about a new order, one where hybrids like him dominate both humans and vampires. As Black Hat and Priest clash in a ferocious duel, fists and blades collide amid the roaring chaos of the train. During the fight, Lucy overhears fragments of their confrontation, piecing together the truth that Priest is not her uncle, but her real father. The revelation shakes her to the core, reshaping everything she thought she knew about her past. Ahead on the tracks, Priestess arrives at the planned sabotage site and begins setting the explosives. Before she can arm them, a group of familiars attacks. She fends them off with fierce precision, but in the struggle, one of the familiars manages to destroy the detonator, leaving the explosives useless. Realizing she has no time to spare and no other option, Priestess makes a fateful decision. She straps the explosives to her motorcycle, sets it on a high-speed collision course with the train engine, and launches herself from the bike at the last possible second. The resulting explosion tears through the front of the train in a fiery detonation. The force causes a catastrophic derailment, sending vampire-filled cars crashing and splintering across the landscape. Inside, the violent wreckage engulfs the remaining creatures and Black Hat, killing them all in a final, blazing inferno. Amid the wreckage, priest, priestess, Hicks, and Lucy survive, battered but alive. Their mission has succeeded, the vampire army is destroyed, and the city has been spared. But the war, Priest knows, is far from over. The train was only the beginning. Following the wreckage of the train and the narrow salvation of the city, Priest returns alone to the dark, smog-filled metropolis governed by the church. His cloak tattered and his expression grim, he walks through the city's oppressive streets, past the ever-watchful eyes of clergy enforcers and frightened citizens who believe the vampire threat is no more. Inside the towering cathedral, Monsignor Aurelius delivers a sermon during High Mass, his voice echoing through the chamber as he preaches about order, obedience, and the victory of the church. The congregation listens in dutiful silence until the heavy doors burst open and Priest enters. Striding down the aisle, he interrupts the ceremony, his presence alone enough to cause a stir. With deliberate motion, he throws a blackened, severed vampire head onto the marble floor before the altar. Gasps and screams ripple through the congregation as the grotesque evidence rolls to a stop at Aurelius's feet. The sight stuns the room into silence. Yet even in the face of irrefutable proof, Aurelius remains defiant. Clinging to his narrative, he declares once more that the war is over, that the people are safe and the church's authority unshaken. Disgusted but unsurprised, Priest turns and walks away. Outside the city gates, in the wasteland shadows just beyond the reach of the church's surveillance, Priest meets Priestess once again. She confirms what he had hoped for. She has sent word to other surviving priests scattered across the frontier. They have heard the call and are coming. The war may be hidden, but it is not over, and the real fight is just beginning.